Deconstructed. It's a show. We're on it right now. This is the show where we take a list that WatchMojo has already done, sometimes from a very long time ago, and then break it down entry by entry to see why things placed where they did. Today is the mother of all lists, the top 10 games of all time from 2014. Let's take a look. Okay, plenty to disagree with, and well, this is just an outdated list. So, before we begin, we're gonna talk to some dudes who were here when we ranked this. Specifically, only one, actually. It's Dave.
Hi.
Dave was here when we ranked this list. Andrew was not. Andrew was not. Guys, how you doing? How we feeling? Pretty good? Pretty bad?
I feel like I've got a large bullseye on my chest right now.
Why is it a bullseye on your chest?
It's okay, it's an outdated list.
It's an outdated list. We can rip on it all we want. A little bit of context. Dave, you want to tell us how we came to the all-time list?
Yeah, so basically how this list came together is we started as a series where we went through each generation. It was around the time that the 7th generation was winding down and the 8th generation was just about to start up. But that's why there's no current gen games on this list. That just for context. So we went 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th generation. Then we took each of the games that were at the top 3 of each of those, and then we put them together into the
to make the master list.
To make the master list, and that's how we came up with this, which is interesting because I only think there was one from the early generation that was Tetris.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of stopped. I'm not sure if we still do that at WatchMojo, but like they sort of stopped doing this, like, you know, best of the 70s, best of the 80s, best of the 90s, best of the 2000s, because no one really cares about the older stuff.
Exactly. It was like a case of like, at that time we were like just blitzing away at all these things. We were doing like top 10 movies of all time, top 10 albums of all time, top 10 TV shows of all time, which we've just done again.
Yeah, and I think there was so much disagreement with this list that you and I starred in a video where we were just like, hey, this is why we did it.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because you were afraid.
Well, like there was some backlash and anyway.
It happens at any time.
There's always backlash.
Yeah, anytime anyone does a top 10 list like this, and there's always going to be backlash because everyone wants to have their favorite on the top 10 list.
So, had my hands up, ready to talk for a second there. So, do we talk about the things we would normally add that should be added to the list now, or do you guys want to wait till the end?
Let's wait.
Let's wait.
Let's wait? Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
You gotta stick around to find out what we'd add. Okay. Shall we begin?
Yep.
What were we thinking?
I think I know who's responsible for that.
Yeah, he was on Deconstructed last week, I think.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, well, we didn't really have a video game department in 2014. We had like anyone who was slightly interested in video games could help rank the lists. Our suggest page wasn't as big. We didn't have as many systems.
All I'm hearing are excuses.
I mean, this Goldeneye's great. I think Goldeneye.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the thing. If we were talking about the most influential games, I think Goldeneye would be pretty secure at number 10. But as far as like a tightly crafted product that will stand the test of time and still
Definitely
do well,
not. No.
Because the experience, like that experience of playing with your friends in front of a Nintendo, on an N64 and in front of an old TV, that's experience that's very unique to
our
Goldeneye,
generation.
to our generation. And that, if I were to, like, top 10 best experiences you can have, maybe Goldeneye is in it. But just as a standalone game itself, very, very good game, but not one of the top 10 best games ever made.
And I've made a statement before, and I will constantly defend this statement. I always think that Perfect Dark is better than
I know you
Goldeneye.
always think Perfect Dark is better.
It is
I disagree
better than
with
Goldeneye.
you. No, it's not.
It is. It's pretty much
old.
It's pretty much
old.
Perfect Dark.
It was old when it
Perfect
was
Dark's
new.
But anyways, for this list, I actually wasn't advocating for Goldeneye, nor was I advocating for Perfect Dark. I was actually advocating for Metal Gear Solid for this slot on this list.
and you know what?
Not bad.
Benefit of hindsight, MGS, I think there would be less argument if we had that at number 10. But we got to keep going.
Yeah, we got to keep going.
Can we just call this one a freebie and move on?
I love this game. This
Everyone
is the
loves
best
this game,
Resident Evil
right?
game. One of the best games ever made, period. Are you
wait.
going to disagree with me?
Dave's got something.
Well, it's good.
It's good?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Top 10 best games ever made, move on.
Okay, so I don't want to be called a hypocrite here because the thing about Elder Scrolls games, or just Bethesda RPGs in general, is not only do they show their age pretty hard, but as soon as a new one comes out, it like immediately sort of replaces the last one. maybe with the exception of Fallout 4. But Skyrim, I still think it's pretty. Considering we got a recent release of this game like last year and it just came to Alexa this year, I still think it's still firmly in the conversation of best games of all time.
It is, and I definitely think it like the re-releases, like as much as everyone likes to hate on them, I think it does kind of justify why it's still fondly remembered and why and why it's still considered one of the best games ever.
And it's pretty ubiquitous. Like I mean, it's kind of everywhere. Like you can't get rid of it. And
I mean, the argument, you could just argue that maybe Morrowind should be in its place, and maybe you'd argue that Morrowind is a better game, but Skyrim is just really also good.
Correction, I think Dan would just argue that. I think.
No, okay, so Morrowind really, it's my favorite game of all time for sure.
That's why.
But I think Skyrim was bigger in so much that it introduced the idea of an open world RPG to so many people. Although that argument could also apply for Oblivion. Each one just kind of took out a much bigger pie. I think Skyrim is good. Skyrim is the one that it kind of clicked in ways that I think Oblivion. I consider Oblivion to be the odd man out in this.
Oddly enough, there was a lot of backlash that we even put Skyrim on the list at all.
Really?
Yeah.
I think honestly, I don't know if we were to do the list again and we had Skyrim at 8.
I think it's also because it still has a lot of bugs.
Yeah, it still had a lot of bugs.
No,
but
I would keep it at 8.
I'd keep it. All right, let's keep going. Mass Effect 2. Okay.
Love this game. Amazing game.
Andrew, you love this game too?
Yeah.
I think it's definitely the best of the series, although I'd say that the combat system was vastly, vastly improved in the third one. Andrew and I often bitch about how the third one is kind of maligned, a little bit underrated. I have a bit of a... Okay, so here's the thing about Mass Effect 2. It's so perfect because the story isn't actually very good. It has good stories within it. Each individual story is quite good, but the overall narrative is extremely simple. It's the Magnificent Seven. It's it is the Magnificent Seven or the Seven Samurai before it.
Seven Samurai in space.
Yeah, Seven Samurai in space. So it's just like, but they find the Seven Samurai in the first like half hour of the movie.
Yeah, but then you have to make them like you after they've already agreed to join your ship.
So that's what and this is one of the things, like, I think people are like, oh, Mass Effect always had a great story and they ruined it in the third. I'm like, did they though? And it's like, oh, they made it so all your choices counted. And it's just like, did they though? But as an individual experience and product, I don't think there's really much you can say against Mass Effect. Yes, you can kind of pull at the threads and say like, maybe this could be better, but like,
And it's one of those games where it's like you actually play it the way you want, because every mission you can play like in different order. You don't have to play it. It's not completely sequential, and there's also cases where you can go after you've gone a certain
it's like there are bubbles where you can do this group of missions in any order. Then
yeah,
it triggers
I think it's like
collector
tiers,
mission,
kind of like Dark
and then
Souls.
you do
Like,
bubbles,
and I like that non-linearity. I think they kind of screwed that up with Mass Effect 3 though.
Yeah, Mass Effect 3, there were problems. Yeah. No denying that there were problems, but
and let's not even get started on Andromeda.
Yeah. So Portal 2. Okay, so a little bit of context for how we rank things here at WatchMojo. And you guys, we talk about this all the time. This idea that we're always reluctant to put the flavor of the week on a very important top 10. Like, you know, if something came out like God of War 2018. If we were to rank this list today, would we say that it's one of the best games of all time? Because it's kind of, you know, it's whatever the opposite of rose-tinted glasses is. It's so fresh in our minds as an experience, and it's so new because it's literally at the cutting edge, that we feel like it's better than it really is.
I can answer that because I reviewed that, but are we going to wait till later?
We can wait till later.
Well, because whether or not, because you need it, like you need like a year to know if the game
kind of
is going to stand up.
it.
Like the way Witcher 3 stands up many years later, we still look back at it and be like, yes, that game is as good
still
as
pretty
we
darn
thought
good.
it was when it was new.
And so Portal 2 was 2012?
No, 2011. I think it was the same year as Skyrim.
Okay. So I guess my argument isn't even valid. That like there had been...
No, this wasn't the game du jour.
No, but I still feel like if we were ranking this today, I'm not sure if Portal 2 would really make it.
Well, it was interesting because when we were doing the 7th gen list, Portal 2 was actually number 1 on that list. Now, I was actually arguing against that.
Now, what was your argument for?
My argument was for something better, like Mass Effect.
Something better. Something better. Real objective
I don't
talk
know.
here from
Here's the
Dave
thing.
Tebow.
I'm going to bring this up again later for a different entry down the line, but Portal 2, Like Mass Effect 2 is a very good game, one of my favorite games of all time, but because there's so much going on to the game, that there are still more flaws in the game. Whereas Portal 2 is a much tighter, more narrow experience, and that just makes it a much better product if that's what you're looking at. If you're not interested in like having everything.
Kind of the beauty and simplicity.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And that's literally like every single argument for every single comment on this list. You just nailed it.
I guess so. I just think that's one of the hardest things, and like we'll get to that when we get to things like Tetris, where it's like, if something is like way more complex and more flawed because of it, does that make that better than something that is very simple and refined? Anyway, that's more of a question that you can debate yourselves as we move on to the next entry.
I'm going to throw you under the bus here. I was really excited when Dan picked up Chrono Trigger on the 3DS.
DS.
DS.
I was playing it on my
like,
3DS.
He's finally playing Chrono Trigger. I'm so excited for you. And then like a couple of days later, you were like, I got bored and I put it down and I hate you.
Yeah.
Funny thing, I was in the same boat. I first got Chrono Trigger on the DS because it was never released in Australia on the SNES and PS1 when it first came out. So my first experience was the DS. I loved it. I thought it was
thank you. Good.
incredible
I
game.
thought you were going to say that you found it meh also. This game is incredible.
It is amazing.
It's a masterpiece. And I don't like JRPGs.
Yeah,
And this game is a masterpiece.
I'm not a fan of like the turn-based combat, and I thought this one was really well. The pacing was like near perfect. Like one of the biggest problems I often have with JRPGs is that I often have to grind in order to level up your characters, and it often slows down the pacing. This, I never had a reason
No,
to
because the game moves along really, really well, and you keep going to like these fresh environments.
you
You're
never have to
always
make
narrow
decisions
focus, and you have to make. So no, anybody who can pick up this game and not finish it is.
Dan, you heard it here first, folks. It's boring. No, it's, you know what? I was too far removed from the context of when the game was released, I think. And I'm already not really a fan of JRPGs. I find them to be kind of like a jumble of different systems with anyway, you know what? I'm not going to dig this hole any deeper. I understand why Chrono Trigger is so well regarded, and I actually don't dislike it. I just never really, it just didn't hook me. I played for about 7 or 8 hours, and I was just like,
I think you do touch on an interesting point. Is like usually if you're playing a game for the first time that's regarded as the classic, and you're playing it for the first time, you don't see it. That predetermined hype beforehand can often deflate the thing. So like if you're saying, oh, you have to play this game, it's the best game of all time. It's the best game of all time. It's like, yeah, it was all right.
Yeah, and there's another entry where I played much after it was released, and I was like, okay, this I get. I get why this is so popular. I get why this is such a big deal. Chrono Trigger, that didn't click with me. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be on the list, though. Okay.
I'm sorry I called you.
That's okay. That's okay. Worse has happened. This is the internet, folks. Okay, so I believe a Half-Life should be on this list, but given the space, now that we're even farther away from this game, and physics engines and stuff didn't really revolutionize games in the way that they thought they would after playing this. Like, I almost feel like this game was the high point for physics, especially in terms of shooters and how we use them, or how the games use them as systems. So my question is not whether this is an influential series. Would you guys think Half-Life or Half-Life 2 would be the better entry for the list?
I would still say Half-Life 2 because I feel like the first Half-Life hasn't aged as well as the second one. Like the second one is like the fact that they got you out of Black Mesa and into this like sprawling world where there's like this like environmental story that's being told that you have no idea what's going on, and it's one of those games where you don't even need to have played the first Half-Life game to appreciate it as well. And also it's kind of like the small stuff like the gravity gun, but being able to like
all that stuff is
with
cool.
experiment with your combat skills. That was amazing.
I just felt that like I don't know. I feel that the original Half-Life did more in terms of how it affected storytelling in games, how Like if if you'd been playing Quake 2 or Duke 3D up until that point, or even something like Unreal, which has a lot more story, like Half-Life still contextualized what you are, what's happening, what's going on, way better even than its sequel. I found the sequel left a lot of unanswered questions. It's called like black box storytelling, it's just like, ooh, what's in the box? We'll never tell you. I don't know what's going on. And then you never find out.
Yeah.
It's
the ending.
I mean, okay, so the ending is a cliffhanger. But even throughout the game, I found, we see now games like Dark Souls tell stories like this. It's the environments and the flavor text and all the other things that you have to pick up on. You have to actively be searching for the story in order to put it together. I think they do it kind of better. I feel like Half-Life 2, oh man, I love this game. I loved it to death. But I almost feel like the way they told their story is kind of pretentious. Like, because there's not much there. And it's sort of just like, whoa, the Emperor has clothes if you look at him. I
don't know. Half-Life 2, I do feel gets away with that because from the perspective of Gordon Freeman, you just left Black Mesa at the end of Half-Life 1, and then you just suddenly, boom, now suddenly you're on a train many years later. So Gordon Freeman also has no idea what's going on, but none of the people who know him are aware of this. So nobody's like, hey, Gordon, so you've been gone for 10 years, here's everything that... They just assume he knows about all of this stuff, so nobody explains it to him, and then you as the player is just like, I don't know what's going on.
I take that as a pretty good... And like that's how the original Half-Life told its story. It's just like, it never stops. You never have to read the manual. You never have to like watch a cutscene. It's all coming into you through your eyes. In that defense is pretty good. I think it's a pretty heady but still legit way to defend the story.
I think if they actually were able to finish the story, I think it probably could have taken the top spot.
Yeah, but alas, no.
It's your fault, Gabe Newell.
All right, so for the three of you out there that watched the Bolt to E3 last year, look it up after on WatchMojo.com. We played a game show. That was like a reality show we did. And at the end, we played a game show, and we had to put together top 10 games of all time. And I picked this one. And the argument I used there was that this is a game that shipped in like a perfect form. There's no improvements to be made on it. Like, you don't have to fix Tetris in any way. Its original state, yes, you can update it with pretty colors and nicer graphics and this and that. But the state of the game itself, which is like a very satisfying puzzle game which scales in difficulty, easy to pick up, tough to master, especially as it gets harder and harder. I just think it's kind of like this perfect sphere,
Yeah, exactly. Like Tetris is. There's a video essay that I really enjoy on YouTube. It was this guy who's the video was called Tetris, the Perfect Game,
right?
In question mark. And yeah, and he made some really good points in this. It's one of those games where you don't need any sort of backstory or understanding or instructions to know what's going on. It's just blocks falling, you make a line, the blocks disappear, you just keep going.
And you play until you touch the top.
Play until you touch the top.
That's it, and
it's
it
good.
gets harder. Needs reflexes.
I'd almost switch this with our first entry just for like how well the game stands the test of time too.
I would absolutely put Tetris number one. For sure.
I feel though that one of the reasons why a lot of people were upset about Tetris being as high as it is because like it's not like their sort of like genre of games where it's like full-on action or adventure style games. I think that's
it's old.
And it's old.
Really
it's old.
I don't think a lot of our audience might not have we barely grew up with this. We're kind of old for this game.
Yeah.
Kind of young for this game. So even still, yeah, I understand the frustration because people. The whole point of top 10s, and I'm getting like really into the philosophy of WatchMojo here, but like people want to see the stuff that they know. I think half of the satisfaction is learning about different stuff, and the other half of the satisfaction is just comparing your knowledge to things. And when it's something like Tetris, yes, you know about it, but it's not exciting. So I understand the disappointment there.
Yeah.
So this is the game I said that I played later, and then I was like, I understand why this is so popular. Like a lot of things I was like, man, this was in a game back then? This was in the game back then? Because like I was a PC guy, especially back then. Like I didn't have a Nintendo console. So I never really I got to play it a bit, but I never got to play it back to front. I never really realized how many things started in this game. Like how many ideas for like how open worlds work, how just a lot of systems work, how Z targeting works, or Z targeting
yeah,
works.
well, yeah, 'cause, yeah, any sort of targeting, like games like Dark Souls, like it draws heavy influence from that.
Yeah. So, best game of all time, yeah or nay, gentlemen?
I'm gonna give it a no. Like one of my top 10 favorite games of all time, but I can't call it the best game of all time.
I just thought it was such a... Anyway, keep going. Go ahead, Dave. I don't want to keep talking.
Well, it's interesting because, yeah, for the time, it was groundbreaking. It was revolutionary, and this like completely blew everyone's mind when it came out. It's like this like large-scale world that feels like a breathable world that you interact with everyone, and the story changes depending with your actions. Like it's a bit like I would say thin by today's standards.
Maybe.
But back then, like that was like mind blowing, especially like when you're suddenly you're an adult and you walk out into the world that was like before
storytelling beats.
Yeah, like this whole world before was like this huge upbeat, like charming market town, and now it's just being overrun by zombies
or whatever. Man, you know what? The more I think about it, the more I'm like, I was kind of hesitant, but I'm just thinking like so many different things and how you. It's really one of the first games to go on where you go on an adventure to the different zones, and each zone is different, and you talk to the locals there. Yeah. Like so many things we kind of take for granted in modern games, even things like Breath of the Wild, which I think we're going to talk about in a sec. Like they're not that impressive to me now, as knowing that they started all the way back then. I can understand if you never played the game, it's kind of hard to understand why it's special, and if you hadn't been playing games up until that point, you might not realize either, because all of the things that you see in the game you see them now everywhere. Almost all the things that we've got.
Exactly.
Unless you guys have anything more to add, we can talk about what we think would be on the list.
Well, now. I will point out there's like, because a lot of other publications in site also put Ocarina of Time as #1. So, and we didn't want to just follow that trend. We actually did look for possible alternatives for that one. But when we looked at all the possible alternatives about what to be a #1, barely anything else came close. The only other two that came close were Half-Life and Tetris, which we've already talked about.
Right. Okay. So, Breath of the Wild.
Here's the thing. Like, I think, like Breath of the Wild, I think is an absolutely incredible game. Like it pushes like the boundaries of like open world game design way farther than I thought it could have before. Like it does have that innovative like touch that.
Let's put a pin in that because I want to come back to that. I fully disagree, but anyway.
But the idea is like you start out with this game and then you've got Breath of the Wild. You compare the two together. I feel like Breath of the Wild is by far the better game. But Ocarina of Time was the game that was the one that set everything up.
Yeah, and if you look at Breath of the Wild, like a lot of it, it's like you took the template from this game and just kind of put an open world template on top of it and kind of meshed the two.
Not just Ocarina of Time, like every previous Zelda game.
Zelda game.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go to visit the Zora, you go to visit the
Gorons,
the Rock Eaters. Yeah. See, my opinion of Breath of the Wild is it's a great game. There's no doubt, and it's polished to a T. But that's really the way I look at it. I don't see it as a revolution of the genre. I see it as a very tight refinement of it. Kind of like the way that Blizzard, Blizzard never really seems to make a new game. They just take a genre that they've been watching, and then they go, okay, how do we make our version of this ultra tight, ultra polished? And that's how I see Breath of the Wild. It was Nintendo looking at the open world genre and not necessarily pushing it forward, but saying like, okay, how can we do our version mega clean, mega refined?
Well, I would make that point is like you say like you didn't think it was that innovative, but just a different design. What I would say to that is that because of Breath of the Wild's non-linearity design and the fact that it actively encourages you to break the game, like. Before, you've had open world games that said you have the freedom to do everything you want. But I look back at those open world games now and I feel like it's freedom with an asterisk because it always tells you to go down a certain path. Breath of the Wild doesn't have that.
Yeah, I guess. Like, I mean, if you look at something like Oblivion,
Morrowind, you can go
wherever you want.
What's his face? The
I
guy.
think there's tons of examples of games that give you a similar amount of freedom. I think Breath of the Wild succeeds because.
Well, the freedom.
We shouldn't only talk about Breath of the Wild. We actually should probably keep continuing. But like I said, I consider it just a better synergy of systems than like the next level of this sort of type of game. But what else would we put? The Last of Us was something that we saw in the comments a lot.
Yeah, like here's the thing. Like I did enjoy The Last of Us, but I don't think it's like 10 out of 10 worthy that so many
Tell
other
us how
people.
you feel, Dan.
I don't like The Last of Us. I find the parts where you're actually controlling the characters to be hella boring and kind of been there, done that. I've snuck around to a lot of places. I've stabbed a lot of dudes in the neck. I've crafted a lot of throwables in my day. None of the action, like that's the biggest impediment to me enjoying a game that's got a great story is gameplay. Like people are like, oh, Spec Ops: The Line, amazing story, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I'm playing the game though. Last of Us for me, good movie, bad game.
I would say,
excuse me, bad, good movie, game.
I thought the gameplay was pretty good for what they were going for. I definitely think there was much more room for improvement. So hopefully they do that with the sequel.
Right.
The next game that was asked for a lot was Red Dead Redemption.
Red Dead Redemption, man. I don't know.
Another no from me.
I just don't think it had the popularity, if that makes any sense.
I think it did. I think
It's more popular now.
I feel like it's more popular now in retrospect because it had like
when
a
people
cult
were
following.
playing.
Yeah.
If that game was more popular, we would have had a sequel by now. I know Rockstar takes their time, but like
Yeah, well,
I think it's good.
Well, I do think Red Dead Redemption is held up on a pedestal because, like, one of the things I really hate is that there's a lot of downtime in between missions. Because
and it follows the same shit that bothers me about Grand Theft Auto games, and I know we're about to get to that. But like GTA games, yes, the whole system they've set up is super impressive, and the world is beautiful, and it's more realized than anything you've played before. And then they're like, oh, I'm gonna corral some sheep.
which is interesting because Grand Theft Auto 5 was next on the list.
Yeah.
Because
Okay, so that's my problem. Like GTA 5, coolest open world they've ever created. What do? Work on the docks and do yoga.
And that point I made before about like freedom with an asterisk, I think that asterisk applies heavily to GTA 5. Because
Could you elaborate?
when you do the missions, they put you down a very strict path that you have to follow. You have to get on this certain car. You have to follow this certain character. You have to do this. You have to collect this certain item.
I think GTA 5 is more interesting as a product in the extra life it's had online. I think a lot of people probably could have predicted that. You know, you look at something as popular as Grand Theft Auto. You look how popular multiplayer games are. You put these two things together naturally. That's going to be interesting. But I'm not sure if that actually gives it extra qualification for best game of all time.
Probably not.
Popularity. What about Minecraft? Did we talk about Minecraft?
I think there's a lot of contention with Minecraft because a lot of people like to hate Minecraft just because it's popular or because it's like. It's a good game, but a lot of people also found it very shallow.
But it's
at
also
the time.
kind of the Tetris thing.
Yeah.
We're going back to Tetris where it's like in Portal 2 where it's like Minecraft is just very narrow focus and does something really well, and as a game that's kind of perfect. But if you're looking for like big story and big action and graphics, if those are factors that matter to you, then you're not going to like Minecraft.
And there's also the question of whether or not it's a game or a building simulator. That's the other question.
It's a game.
But that's
it's a game.
It's fully a game.
Those were all 7th gen games. Those were all the big ones that were saying about the 7th gen games. So it kind of gives you an idea of like recent memory, probably a lot of younger audience members. So
I think
that's okay. I can understand that. But there were 2 others that were that were commented on a lot. Doom.
Oh, yeah. Doom, I think.
But again, influential,
Very
that would be like
influential.
top 3.
And here's the question though: could Doom ever replace Goldeneye?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think Doom could.
Doom could have replaced. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. Doom, better product.
Okay. And the last one, there was a lot of different ones there, but Pokemon.
Pokemon what?
That's the thing. It was just Pokemon.
Pokemon Snap, obviously.
Hey, you Pikachu.
Well, I will say with Pokemon, like it's a great concept. The first one was great, but also had a lot of bugs. Second one was incredible. I still think is the best.
You've played Pokemon Go more than any other human being on the planet.
I wouldn't say that. I'm still at level 29.
How many phones do you play with when you play Pokemon
Just
Go?
this.
Just the iPad.
You just play
Okay,
Pokemon
guys,
Go?
let's not get hurtful because we're
StarCraft.
way over time.
StarCraft
We're
should
way
be on the
over
list.
time.
StarCraft.
No.
Yes.
I think StarCraft should also be on the list.
Ah.
Modern games, though, we're talking Witcher 3. I think pretty much everyone would almost agree that The Witcher 3 would have a place on the list, if not as an honorable mention.
I would say that.
I put Witcher 3 above Mass Effect 2.
Fair enough. I think it Yeah, I would agree with that. And then, what about Dad of War?
Yeah, here's the thing, like God of War, like I did the review for that. I think it was good. I'm not on the same wavelength that everyone else thinks. It's like the 10 out of 10.
But you wouldn't put it on the list.
No, I probably would not put it on the list. Like, sorry, God of War fans. Like, I don't think it's like, it's good, but not that good.
Okay, well, we are way over time. Before we go, for those of you that have stuck around, this is my last Deconstructed. This is going to be the last time I'm going to be hosting the show. I really loved this, and if you've stuck around to watch a number of these, I'm extremely grateful. You know what? Any number of these. I thank you, and I thank WatchMojo. I thank my esteemed guests for conversing with me, not only today, but every time we've done this. It's been a really good run, guys. Thank you very much. No applause from Andrew? What the hell, man? Oh, man.
I didn't know we were doing the clapping
Disrespect
thing. I didn't know
till
we were
the
doing
end.
the clapping thing.
It's okay,
Sorry.
guys. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for watching Mojo Plays. Be sure to subscribe and click on the link in the description below to check out our suggestion page and vote on what content you'd like to see us cover next.